The head of the Air Force Academy has addressed the fact that African American members of the academy were unfortunately confronted with racial slurs written on message boards toward them. And so Lieutenant General J. Silveria responded to that, and he addressed these cadets, and here's what he had to say.
If you're outraged by those words, then you're in the right place. You should be outraged not only as an airman, but as a human being. If you can't teach someone from another gender, whether that's a man or a woman, with dignity and respect, then you need to get out. If you demean someone in any way, then you need to get out. And if you can't treat someone from another race or a different color skin with dignity and respect, then you need to get out. I would be naive, and we would all be naive to think that everything is perfect here. We would be naive to think that we shouldn't discuss this topic. We would also be tone deaf not to think about the backdrop of what's going on in our country. Things like Charlottesville and Ferguson, the protests in the NFL.
Who doesn't love Lieutenant General J. Silveria? Well, I probably have an answer for that, but the alt-right guys, etc., that loved Charlottesville, well, that's a lieutenant general there, so I assume you're saluting, right? It's actually so easy, and it's such common sense. And basically what he's saying is, I got cadets here who are white, black, Latino, etc. We're all fighting together in the US military. This is not complicated. This is not remotely hard. Of course,
supposed to be a team.
Yeah, of course we're gonna respect one another. You're gonna pick on our forces, our guys who signed up to possibly give their lives for this country, and you're gonna insult them that way, and you didn't think I was gonna stand up for them? Come on. And this guy is fantastic. It's the only thing that's a shame is that that speech seems extraordinary today, when it should be perfectly ordinary.
I love it, man. Because of the strength of it. In a world where we're diluting messages right and left, and well-meaning NFL players are talking about linking arms and therefore massively diluting the intent of a righteous protest that Colin Kaepernick started, and NFL owners are one of whom at least has given $1 million to Donald Trump, saying that he's linking. He on the wrong side of this. And here it is, as you say, Cenk, so simple. He didn't just say there's no place for it. He said, if you think it, get out. I don't want you here. Get out. I loved it. That was bold and great.
And think about why it's important militarily too. If you're not going to defend your fellow, Air Force cadet because of the color of their skin or for any other reason, well, then we can't rely on you. We can't trust you. You're going to let them down in the battlefield. I mean, that's exactly the kind of division that our enemies would love. If you're going to have a strong military, remember this is the Air Force, but remember the Army slogan was an army of one. The whole point of that is we're better together. Again, this should be elementary, but in this day and age, people will be mad at him for pointing out Ferguson and the NFL and saying like, oh, now you want to have blacks have the same rights and not have the police abuse them or shoot at them when they're unarmed. Of course they should have the same rights. Of course they should be protected just like everyone else. That's what the whole point of the country is.
Yeah, I guess, I thought it was a great speech. As someone whose husband went to this Air Force Academy, we were really into this story. I think the question now is, how do you operationalize this impassioned speech, right? Where does it go? They're not gonna get out. They came here, right? They're not gonna leave. So how do we investigate this thoroughly? How do we find the folks who kind of perpetuated this? And then how do we punish them? Because although it may not be illegal, the military has its own set of guidelines, right? That these folks need to be brought to justice in whatever form that the academy would deem appropriate. And I just think this is particularly interesting in the context of a national conversation about the patriotism of black folks. So how could you expect black people to serve, right, when you haven't rooted out racism in the military? I just think it's it's an interesting conversation that Trump should be having. He should be outraged by this and not necessarily, folks taking a knee.
He'll be outraged, but if he responds to this in any way or is made aware of it, I imagine he'll be outraged in the other way. That here was this guy expressing some degree of outrage at Trump's behavior, right? And a degree of sympathy and understanding for what happened in Charlottesville, what happened in Ferguson, mentioning Ferguson, and the NFL, protests in the NFL. That wasn't saying we've got guys disrespecting the flag and disrespecting us in the NFL. That was him saying, we got an issue here where we have people taking a stand for a right that they believe in the NFL, and we're condemning them. I think he's on the right side of every single issue.
Yeah, and what he's saying here is, to Ambria's point, look, you want everybody to salute the troops during the national anthem. Well, these are African Americans who are the troops. And I'm not gonna let you come in here and insult them this way, degrade them this way. And if you really cared about the troops, you'd care a lot more about the horrible degradation and insults and threats that are going to actual troops than you would about whether somebody's exercising their freedom of speech in a ceremony of any sort. And that is inarguable. Support independent media. Come join us at the Young Turks. TYTnetwork.com/join.